She had always been the kind of student people barely noticed. She sat in the second row, close enough to see the board clearly but far enough to avoid unnecessary attention. Most days she kept her head down, her notebooks clean, her handwriting careful, and her presence quiet. It wasn't that she disliked people. She simply felt more comfortable watching from a small distance, understanding everything without needing to say much. For some reason, silence felt easier than speaking. Her teachers didn't think badly of her, but they didn't think much at all. To them, she was one of those middle ground students who submitted work on time, didn't cause trouble, and blended into the flow of the classroom. They assumed she was fine. They assumed she was average. They assumed all the things that usually keep someone invisible. What they didn't realize was that she had a small world of her own that lived quietly inside her mind. She liked learning. She liked understanding how things worked. She liked figuring things out in her own slow, patient way. But she never raised her hand, never volunteered, never pushed herself forward. She worried people would think she was trying to show off. She'd seen what happened to other kids who spoke up too much. She didn't want that kind of attention. Still, every now and then, someone noticed small things, like how she finished her classwork before most students even started complaining about it, or how she corrected her own mistakes without being told, or how she stayed back after class sometimes, waiting for everyone to leave before asking a tiny, quiet question. Not because she didn't understand, but because she wanted to be sure she understood even better. One teacher in particular had started paying more attention to her. Not publicly, not in a way that would embarrass her, but quietly. The teacher would watch how she worked, how she focused without distraction, how she absorbed details, how she solved problems faster than she let on. It was subtle but clear. This student had something most others didn't. The teacher began to wonder why she never spoke up, why she always held herself back. Was it lack of confidence? Was she shy? Or did she simply not yet know what she was capable of? An idea formed in the teacher's mind, a test. Not a punishment, not something to trap her, but a way to see what she could really do. The teacher wanted to find out whether all those quiet signs added up to something more. One afternoon, after class had ended and the room was half empty, the teacher called her over. She walked slowly, unsure if she had done something wrong. She held her notebook close to her chest, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. The teacher didn't scold her or give her a warning. Instead, the teacher placed a sheet of paper on the desk. It was a task far more challenging than anything given in class. Something most students her age weren't even introduced to. Something that even the top performers sometimes needed extra help with. She looked at it, her eyebrows lifting for a moment. It wasn't impossible, but it was definitely harder than anything she had worked on before. "This is for you," the teacher said gently. "Take your time. There's no rush." She didn't understand why she was chosen. She didn't think she had done anything impressive. But she nodded slowly and took the paper with both hands. She felt a mix of confusion and pressure, like she had been pushed into a place she wasn't sure she belonged. As she walked home that day, she kept glancing at the paper, wondering if the teacher had made a mistake. Why her? Why not one of the students who always got attention? She tried not to overthink it, but the weight of the task followed her the whole way home. At her small desk in her room, she spread out her books, sharpened her pencil, and looked at the challenge again. The house was quiet, the kind of calm where thoughts could breathe. She took a deep breath and began reading through every line. First, everything felt complicated, almost heavy. But instead of panicking, she did what she always did. She broke it down piece by piece. She had always been good at seeing patterns. She noticed small details that others overlooked. She didn't rush through tasks just to finish. She took her time to truly understand them. And even though this challenge was difficult, she approached it with the same steady patience she used for everything else. Minutes turned into an hour, then 2. She erased mistakes, wrote new steps, rearranged ideas, and tried again. She didn't get frustrated the way many students would. Instead, she kept going, telling herself quietly that every hard thing eventually becomes simple when broken down enough. When she felt tired, she took a short break, then returned with even more focus. She didn't want to stop until she got it right. The challenge felt like a mountain, but she handled it one step at a time. By the late evening, she began to see the shape of the solution. Little by little, the hard task became clearer. She noticed a pattern hidden behind the confusion, a path forward that no one had explained to her. She felt a glow of excitement, small but warm, as she realized she was finally cracking it. Her family passed by her room a few times, noticing her unusual level of focus, but they didn't interrupt. They knew she liked solving things her own way. They knew this quiet determination was part of her nature. Hours later, she finally put her pencil down and stared at the page. She had done it. She solved the problem that was supposed to be too hard. She solved the challenge that wasn't meant for someone like her, or so she had thought. But even after finishing it, she didn't feel overly proud or dramatic. She simply felt calm, accomplished, like she had opened a door she didn't know existed. She rewrote everything neatly, organizing each step carefully so the teacher could understand how she reached the final answer. She didn't want it to look messy. She wanted her process to be clear and honest. When she got to school the next morning, she felt a small twist of nervousness in her stomach. She worried the teacher would say she did it wrong. She worried she misunderstood the assignment entirely. But she still walked forward and placed the completed work on the teacher's desk. The teacher looked at her, surprised she had done it so quickly, then nodded with a warm smile. She walked back to her seat quietly, unsure of what would happen next. For the rest of the day, she tried not to think about it. She focused on her regular classes, listened carefully, took notes, and stayed as invisible as she always did. But deep down, she kept wondering what her teacher would think when they read her work. What she didn't know was that her life was already beginning to change. Even though everything still felt the same, she had taken her first quiet step into a world where her abilities could no longer stay hidden. She didn't realize it yet, but the simple act of accepting that challenge had set something in motion, something that would soon reveal a side of her she had never dared to show. And this was only the beginning. The next morning felt heavier than usual for her, even though nothing on the outside had changed. She walked into school with the same steady steps, carrying the same backpack, wearing the same quiet expression. But inside, something kept pulling at her thoughts. It was the task she had completed the night before, the hard piece the teacher had given her. She still didn't understand why she had been chosen for it, and now she worried she might have misunderstood everything. Still, she tried to act normal. She sat in her usual place, opened her notebook, and waited for the day to begin. The chatter around her flowed as it always did, students laughing about small things, sharing stories from the previous night, asking each other whether they'd done their homework. She listened without trying to listen, letting the noise fade into the background. Her teacher entered the room, holding a stack of papers. She didn't think much of it at first, but when she saw the teacher glance in her direction for a moment longer than usual, her heart gave a small jump. She looked back down at her notebook, pretending she didn't notice. The teacher didn't say anything to her immediately. Instead, the class began as usual. But throughout the lesson, she could feel the teacher's eyes land on her every now and then, like they were studying her quietly. It made her uncomfortable, not because she felt guilty, but because she misunderstood attention. She had spent so long blending in that even a few extra seconds felt like a spotlight. At break time, she left the classroom early and sat beneath a tree near the schoolyard, a place she often retreated to when she needed silence. She loved the shade there, the soft rustle of leaves overhead, and the way the breeze carried the sound of distant conversations without overwhelming her. She took out her lunch but barely touched it. Her thoughts were too busy replaying every step she had taken in solving the challenge. She wondered if the teacher would think she copied it from somewhere. She had seen other students get accused of that before. Even though she knew she had worked honestly and carefully, doubt still slipped into her mind. The idea of being misunderstood felt more frightening than failing the task. While she sat alone, she didn't notice the teacher watching her from a distance through the classroom window. The teacher had her completed work in hand, reading through each line, each step, each explanation. There was something remarkable in the way she had broken down the problem, not just correct, but creative. It was the kind of solution that suggested a deeper understanding, the kind of thinking even advanced students struggled to reach. The teacher couldn't help but feel impressed, even a little shocked. It wasn't a lucky guess. It wasn't a copied method. It was a genuine, thoughtful solution, and it came from a student who rarely said more than a few words in class. When the break ended, she returned to the classroom slowly. She didn't want to run into her teacher accidentally, but she also didn't want to be late. When she reached her seat, the teacher approached her quietly. "Can you come see me after class?" the teacher asked in a soft tone. Her stomach tightened. She nodded, even though she wasn't sure she wanted to. The rest of the lesson felt like a blur. She wrote notes, listened carefully, but her mind kept drifting toward what might happen later. When the final bell rang, she waited until everyone else left the classroom. She gathered her things slowly, as if moving gently might ease her nerves. The teacher sat at the desk, not looking upset, but thoughtful. That made her even more unsure. When she finally approached, the teacher held up her completed assignment. "You did all of this on your own?" the teacher asked. She nodded, her hands clasped together. The teacher studied her for a moment. "Can you explain how you solved it?" Her heart raced, but she did her best to answer. She pointed to the first section and explained the pattern she had noticed. Then she moved to the second part and described the connection she found. Her voice remained quiet, but steady. She didn't try to sound smart. She just explained what she had understood. As she spoke, the teacher's expression shifted from curiosity to genuine admiration. There was no doubt left. She hadn't guessed. She hadn't copied. She had solved it with clarity and depth. "You know," the teacher said gently, "this is not something most students your age can do." She lowered her eyes, uncertain how to respond. For so long she had lived in the space between being unnoticed and not wanting to be noticed. Praise felt unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. "I gave you this task because I saw something in the way you work," the teacher continued. "And you proved you have a real gift. A real gift." Those words stayed in her mind, almost echoing. She had never thought of herself that way. She had always assumed she was just someone who tried hard, who liked to understand things. She never imagined it might mean something more. The teacher leaned back slightly. "I'd like to give you more challenges like this. Not to test you, but to help you grow. Would you be open to that?" She hesitated. It wasn't that she didn't want to learn more. She did. But the idea of standing out frightened her. She didn't want other students to notice her suddenly. She didn't want them to think she was different in a strange way. But the teacher seemed to understand her silence. "You don't have to rush, and you don't have to show anything to anyone. This can be just between us for now." That made her feel better. She nodded slowly. When she left the classroom, she felt lighter, but also confused. She walked down the hallway quietly, thinking about the teacher's words. A gift, a talent, growth, all words she had never associated with herself. On her way home, she looked different from the outside. Still the same quiet student walking with careful steps. But inside, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. The beginning of possibility. That night, while sitting at her desk, she looked at her books differently. It was no longer just homework. It was something she could build on. Something she could explore. Something that might take her farther than she had imagined. Still, she wasn't sure where this journey would lead. She only knew one thing. That hard piece the teacher had given her was just the beginning. And even though she didn't fully believe in herself yet, someone else had noticed her potential long before she did. For the first time, she wondered what else she might be capable of if she stopped hiding her abilities. The thought felt frightening but also strangely exciting. She didn't realize it yet, but this quiet moment, the simple choice to keep going, was about to shape the next steps of her life in ways she never saw coming. The following days carried a different air for her, even though she tried hard to keep everything the same. She still sat in her usual seat, still kept her notebooks lined with neat writing, and still spoke only when necessary. But deep inside, a restlessness had begun to grow, something quiet but undeniable. It was the feeling of being seen for the first time, of realizing she might have a talent she never recognized. The teacher kept their promise. They didn't bring attention to her in class, didn't make announcements, didn't show her work to others. Everything was kept between them, just as she hoped. But every afternoon, the teacher would leave a new task on her desk before she left the room. These weren't ordinary assignments. Each one was more complex, more layered, and more challenging than the last. At first, she felt nervous each time she unfolded the paper. The tasks were nothing like the ones her classmates struggled with. They required long thinking, patience, and a type of understanding that most students never practiced. But every time she sat with them, whether at her desk at home or under her favorite tree at school, she found herself slipping into the same calm focus she had discovered during the first challenge. One day, the teacher gave her a task that was considered a real test even for older students. It wasn't meant to be harsh. It was meant to see how far her mind could stretch when she worked freely. The teacher placed it on her desk at the end of the day, meeting her eyes for a moment before walking away. Something in that small look told her that this one was special. She waited until she got home before opening it carefully. Her room was filled with soft evening light, and the air was calm. She read through the problem once, then twice, then a third time. It looked impossible at first glance. The pieces didn't make sense together. The patterns she usually saw didn't appear right away. But instead of getting discouraged, she felt a strange spark run through her. It was the feeling she got whenever she faced something truly challenging. She didn't feel helpless, she felt curious. She sat down, took out her pencils, and began breaking the problem into smaller parts. She didn't rush. She didn't guess blindly. She studied each detail, trying different methods, erasing, rewriting, and circling key sections that felt important. Her thoughts swirled softly but steadily, like a stream finding its way around rocks. She worked deep into the night, her house quiet around her. The rest of her family had gone to bed, but she remained awake, determined to solve what was in front of her. She didn't notice the time passing. She didn't feel tired. Instead, she felt something she had rarely felt before: purpose. Hours later, as she studied one particular section of the problem, she noticed a small connection she had overlooked. It was tiny, almost invisible, but it was enough to open the entire path forward. She sat up straighter, her heartbeat quickening. She tried applying this new idea to the next steps, and suddenly everything began to make sense. A smile slowly formed on her face, small and soft, the kind she rarely allowed herself to show. She wasn't smiling because she wanted praise. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She smiled because she had discovered something on her own. Something she had earned through patience and quiet thinking. Once she finished, she leaned back in her chair, staring at the page. It was neat, complete, and far more advanced than anything she had ever done. It didn't feel like luck. It felt like a breakthrough. She rewrote the entire solution in her cleanest handwriting, making sure every step was clear and honest. She wanted the teacher to see exactly how she reached each conclusion. The next morning, she walked to school with the paper tucked safely inside her notebook. She felt a faint nervous flutter in her stomach, but it wasn't fear this time. It was anticipation. She wanted to know if she truly understood the task as well as she thought she did. She placed the completed work on the teacher's desk before first period began. The teacher glanced at it, nodded, and didn't comment. To anyone else, it would have looked like a normal submission. But both of them knew what it meant. Throughout the day, she found it difficult to focus on her regular classwork. She kept wondering when the teacher would look at her solution and what their reaction would be. Every time someone walked past her desk or the teacher shifted papers, her heart jumped. It wasn't until the afternoon that the teacher finally called her quietly. "Do you have a moment?" the teacher asked. She followed, her steps small but steady. She entered the staff room, where the teacher had placed her paper on the table. There were notes written in the margins, small circles, underlines, and comments. But none of them appeared negative. The teacher looked up at her with a softened expression. "This," the teacher said, touching the page lightly, "is remarkable." Her breath caught for a moment. "Do you know how rare it is for someone your age to think like this?" The teacher continued. "This isn't just correct. It's creative. You saw something most students wouldn't even know to search for." She didn't know what to say. Words felt too small to explain the mixture of surprise, relief, and pride moving inside her. "How did you come up with this part?" the teacher asked, pointing to the section she had solved in a unique way. She explained quietly, step by step, the same way she always did. She wasn't showing off. She was simply sharing what she saw in her mind. The teacher listened carefully, nodding slowly. It was clear the teacher wasn't just impressed. There was something deeper, a kind of respect. "You have something very special," the teacher said at last. "You don't just understand the problem. You understand the ideas behind it. That's what makes this brilliant." Brilliant. The word felt heavy, almost unreal. She had never imagined someone would describe her that way. The teacher leaned back thoughtfully. "I want you to know something. When I first gave you the initial challenge, I wasn't sure what would happen. I thought maybe you'd show promise. But this is beyond promise. You're showing genuine talent. The kind that grows with the right guidance." A soft warmth spread through her chest. She wasn't used to praise, especially not praise that felt so meaningful. "Don't hide this," the teacher said gently. "You don't have to be loud to be great. You don't need to change your personality or become someone else. Just keep going. Let your mind grow. There's a place in the world for quiet thinkers like you. More than you realize." She felt her eyes lower, not out of shame but from the overwhelming emotion she struggled to hold in place. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly understood. As she walked out of the room, she felt like she was carrying something new inside her. A quiet strength. A belief she never had before. She didn't suddenly see herself as gifted or brilliant. But she began to accept that maybe, just maybe, she had potential. When she returned to class, everything looked the same desks, the same chatter, the same routine. But she felt different. She felt like the world had shifted just a little, enough for her to see a new path forming. That evening, when she sat at her desk again, she didn't wait for another challenge. Instead, she opened her book and tried exploring ideas on her own. She followed patterns, created new problems, tested out different approaches. She wasn't doing it for a grade or to impress her teacher. She was doing it because she wanted to, and that was the biggest change of all. She didn't realize it yet, but this moment, this quiet breakthrough, was only the beginning of something much larger. A part of her that she had kept hidden for so long had finally begun to grow, and there was no turning back now. The weeks that followed felt like a slow but steady rise for her, even though everything around her looked the same. She went to school like always, sat in her usual seat, and kept her quiet nature. But inside, something had changed. She no longer looked at herself as someone who just tried hard. She started seeing how her mind worked differently, how she could understand things deeply when she gave herself time. The teacher continued to give her new challenges, each one a little harder than the last. Sometimes they made her feel overwhelmed at first, but she had learned something important. Difficulty didn't mean impossibility. Every time she came across a problem that looked too big, she reminded herself of what she had already solved. And with patience, she always found a path forward. She had never imagined she could enjoy something that made her think so deeply, but she did. Even on the days when she felt tired, she still felt drawn to the work. It wasn't about proving anything anymore. It wasn't even about impressing her teacher. It was about discovering what she could do. But even though her confidence was growing, she still worried about attention. Her classmates didn't know about her extra tasks, and she liked it that way. She wasn't ready to be noticed. She wasn't ready for questions or comments or whispers. She just wanted to grow quietly. One afternoon, while she sat under her usual tree during break, something unexpected happened. A classmate approached her. She rarely talked to anyone unless they spoke to her first, and even then, she kept her answers short. But this classmate seemed friendly and curious. "Do you understand the math homework?" the classmate asked. She looked up slowly. "I think so," she said softly. "Can you help me with one part?" "I don't get it." She hesitated. She wasn't used to helping others. She worried she might explain things in the wrong way or confuse them even more. But the classmate looked hopeful, so she nodded. They sat together under the tree, and she explained the method step by step. She didn't rush. She didn't show off. She just tried to make it simple. The classmate followed her explanation carefully, then suddenly said, "Oh, I get it now. You explain really well." She felt a small warmth rise in her chest. She wasn't used to hearing something like that. Helping someone else felt surprisingly good. It was the first time she shared a part of her abilities with another student, and the moment stayed with her long after the classmate walked away. But with new experiences came new challenges. A few days later, something unusual happened in class. The teacher was explaining a topic that most students found confusing. The room felt tense, filled with quiet frustration and whispered questions. She understood the explanation easily, but she didn't raise her hand. She never did. The teacher noticed her quiet understanding. After a long moment, the teacher looked at her and said gently, "Would you like to explain this part to the class?" "Only if you want to." Her heart pounded instantly. She froze. The entire room suddenly felt too bright, too loud, too full of eyes. She shook her head almost immediately. The teacher nodded kindly, not pushing her any further. "That's okay," the teacher said, continuing the lesson. She spent the rest of the day feeling guilty, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. She didn't want attention, but she also didn't want to disappoint her teacher. She wished she were brave enough to speak up, even just a little. But bravery wasn't something she knew how to reach yet. After school, she stayed behind again, as she often did. She approached the teacher's desk and spoke quietly. "I'm sorry I couldn't explain in class." The teacher shook their head gently. "You don't have to apologize. Speaking in front of others is difficult for many people." She looked down at her hands. "I wanted to help, but I got scared." The teacher smiled softly. "Being scared doesn't mean you're not capable. You don't have to force yourself all at once. Growth isn't a race. It's okay to go at your own pace." Those words eased something inside her. For so long, she had felt pressured, not by others, but by her own fear of failing or looking foolish. Hearing the teacher speak so gently made her realize she was allowed to take her time. The teacher continued, "What matters is that you understand, and when you're ready, you'll share it." "I believe that." She nodded, feeling a mix of relief and determination. As she walked home, she thought about the moment under the tree when she helped her classmate. She hadn't been scared then. She had spoken calmly and clearly. Maybe speaking in front of the whole class felt too big right now, but helping one person at a time felt possible. In the following days, a small shift happened. A couple of classmates started asking her for help with homework. She didn't understand how they knew she could explain things, but word must have spread quietly. She didn't mind. They approached her kindly and respectfully, and she appreciated that. Helping them made her realize that she didn't need to be loud to be helpful. She didn't need to stand in front of the class to make a difference. She could share what she knew in small ways, ways that felt comfortable and natural. Meanwhile, the teacher continued to challenge her. One afternoon, the teacher placed another advanced problem on her desk. This one didn't look like anything she had seen before. It wasn't just a test of skill. It required thinking from different angles, almost like solving a puzzle with missing pieces. She took the paper home and studied it for a long time. She started with what she already knew, then slowly expanded into new ideas. Unlike her earlier tasks, this one didn't reveal its answer easily. She made mistakes, erased them, tried again, got stuck, took breaks, then returned with a clearer mind. One evening, while she was staring at the problem in frustration, her family noticed her stress. "You don't have to do everything perfectly," one of them said gently. She didn't answer right away. She wasn't chasing perfection. She was chasing understanding. But she appreciated the comfort in their voice. Eventually, she stepped away from her desk and took a short walk outside. The cool night air helped settle her mind. She didn't look at the sky or think about anything complicated. She just breathed, slowly, calmly. When she returned to her room, she looked at the problem again with fresh eyes, and suddenly, something clicked. A connection she hadn't seen before appeared clearly. She grabbed her pencil and began writing quickly but carefully. The solution began unfolding piece by piece, like a door slowly opening. She stayed up late that night, finishing the task with a renewed sense of confidence. When she finally put her pencil down, she felt tired but proud. Not because she solved it easily, but because she didn't give up. In school the next day, she handed in her work quietly. The teacher studied it during lunch break, then called her in afterward. "This one was hard," the teacher said with a smile. "But you didn't run from it. That shows real strength." She looked at the teacher, surprised. "I got stuck many times." "That's part of learning," the teacher replied. "What matters is that you kept trying." Those simple words made her feel seen in a new way. She realized that intelligence wasn't just about solving things quickly. It was about staying patient, being curious, and trying again when things didn't make sense. And she was learning to do exactly that. Later that week, the teacher asked if she would like to join a small group of students who enjoyed extra problem-solving tasks after school. It wasn't a competitive club, just a quiet group of learners who liked challenging themselves. She thought about it carefully. Joining meant stepping out of her comfort zone. It meant being around others who might notice her abilities. It meant trying something new, but it also meant growing. After a long moment, she nodded. The teacher's smile said everything. That simple yes would become one of the most important choices she ever made, because it opened doors she never knew were waiting for her. The news about her work traveled through the school faster than she ever expected. She didn't ask for any attention, and she didn't know how to react when people who barely noticed her before now whispered her name in the hallways. Some students looked at her with surprise, some with curiosity, and some with a kind of respect she had never felt around her peers. She didn't walk differently, and she didn't try to show off. She stayed the same, quiet and thoughtful, but something inside her had changed. For the first time, she felt like she belonged. The teachers, who used to see her as just another face in the crowd, now treated her with a new kind of warmth. They didn't say much, but she could feel the difference. When she asked a question, they listened more carefully. When she worked silently in the corner, they noticed. It wasn't the attention that mattered to her, though. It was the feeling that someone finally understood her effort, her patience, and her way of learning. One morning, she was called to the office again. She walked there with slow steps, unsure if something had gone wrong. Her heart beat fast, even though she tried to stay calm. When she entered, the teachers were waiting with gentle smiles, not the serious looks they had when they first tested her. They invited her to sit, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. They explained that her work had impressed everyone, not only because it was correct but because of the creativity behind it. They believed she had a gift that needed nurturing, not hiding. They told her they wanted to recommend her for a special program where students could learn at a higher level. She didn't know how to react. The thought of being in a new environment with new challenges scared her. But at the same time, something deep inside her felt ready. She went home that day with her mind full of thoughts. She didn't brag about anything. Instead, she quietly shared the news with her family during dinner. They looked at her with a mix of joy and pride. They had always supported her, even when no one else noticed her effort. Now, seeing her get the recognition she deserved made their eyes shine. They didn't push her into it. They simply told her that whatever she chose, they believed in her. That night, she lay awake, thinking about everything that had happened. She thought about the hard piece the teachers had given her, the late nights she spent figuring it out, and the fear she felt when she handed her work in. She remembered the quiet hope she held, even when she expected nothing special to come from it. And now, here she was, being offered a chance she never imagined. The next day, she told the teachers she wanted to join the program. She didn't say it loudly or proudly. She simply nodded and said she would like to try. They were thrilled, and they guided her through the steps she needed to take. She began attending extra sessions after school, where she met students from different classes who were also interested in learning more. At first, she felt out of place. These students spoke confidently, answered quickly, and didn't hesitate the way she did. But she soon realized that she didn't need to be like them. Her strength was in her calm thinking, her patience, and her ability to understand things deeply. She didn't rush through anything. She understood that her way of learning wasn't slow, it was just different. As she continued in the program, her confidence grew naturally. She did not try to compete with others. She didn't try to be the center of attention. She simply did what she had always done. Worked quietly, thought deeply, and stayed focused. Slowly, people around her began noticing that she had a special way of solving problems that others overlooked. Her teachers encouraged her to enter competitions, but she hesitated at first. Standing in front of people made her nervous. But over time, as she watched other students present their ideas, she realized that being seen wasn't something to fear. It was a chance to share something meaningful. So she agreed to participate. When the day of the competition came, she stood in a room filled with students who seemed more confident, louder, and more experienced. She felt her heart pounding, but she didn't turn back. She held on to the quiet strength that had carried her this far. When it was her turn, she walked to the front and presented her work in simple words. She didn't try to impress the judges with fancy explanations. She just explained her process the way she understood it. The judges listened closely, and by the end of her presentation, the room was silent. She couldn't tell if that silence was good or bad, but she stayed calm. When the results were announced, her name was called among the top performers. She didn't jump or shout. She just smiled softly, feeling a warmth in her chest, knowing she had earned this moment. After the competition, her teachers congratulated her with genuine pride. Her classmates looked at her differently, not with surprise anymore, but with respect. They realized that talent didn't always come wrapped in confidence or loud achievements. Sometimes it grew quietly, waiting for the right moment to shine. As time went on, she continued to grow. She didn't become famous or try to be a star. She stayed humble, learning more each day, helping others who struggled, and inspiring her teachers with her steady progress. Her journey wasn't about being perfect. It was about discovering her own strength and not letting doubt hold her back. She often thought back to the day they gave her that hard piece. What was meant to test her had turned into the moment that changed her life. It opened a door she never thought she could walk through. She realized that sometimes the challenges people throw at you are not meant to break you. They are meant to show you what you're capable of. In the end, she didn't thank the teachers for giving her something difficult. She thanked them for believing in her once they saw her effort. She thanked her family for supporting her quietly and patiently. And she thanked herself for not giving up, even when she felt invisible. Her story became an example for younger students who thought they weren't good enough. She didn't stand in front of them giving advice. She didn't need to. Her journey spoke for itself. It showed that even the quietest person in a room can have the loudest impact if they stay true to their path. And as she continued moving forward, she carried a lesson that stayed with her forever. Sometimes, the smallest spark of confidence can light up an entire path, leading you to places you never thought you could reach.